Okay, so we can continue. The next speaker is Marcell Stippinger. He's working for the Department of Computational Sciences in the Konrad Wigner Research Center for Physics. He's also the AI ambassador for Institute, and Marci will present how to use in the scientific way in coding the large language models. Marci, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So, as Gergely already told it, I will try to. I am a physicist working at Konrad Wigner in a neuroscience interested group. So we do machine learning tasks and similar things in our research group. Also some statistical physics and complex systems. And since September, the official start of the AI ambassador program, I am one of the AI ambassadors of Konrad Wigner. So I will tell a few words about this, that this system was brought to life to have a contact in each of the Konrad research institutes who spreads the information about the services that the Konrad headquarters provide, organize and announce events and workshops for the researchers. So my talk will be something you may have heard, but I have some new updates. So I hope it won't be boring even to those who have already heard me about this topic. And also, we as ambassadors forward the needs and ideas of researchers to the Konrad headquarters. And in this AI for Science program, where we are the ambassadors, there are some AI experts who you can address with your needs or project ideas if you work in a Konrad research institute, and they will provide you support, technical support with your project. Okay, so what's today's talk about? So I will give a brief introduction about the artificial intelligence technologies and large language models. I will talk about limitations and potential risks in using those systems. Finally, some theory about pair programming, and most importantly, there will be examples and practical session at the end, where we will use GitHub Copilot for everyday coding tasks. So let's start. First, for the practical sessions, if you wish, you can download the data using this QR code or the short link. And in the meantime, also install an IDE, an integrated development environment. If you want to follow, you will need to use Copilot, which you can either start with a pre-evaluation period, or if you work at an educational institute, a university, or at a research institute, you may be eligible for a free license. I will talk about that. So how do we define artificial intelligence? On the left, you have a Venn diagram of all those deep neural network technologies that we are hearing today and we are using. The most important thing is that here, everything is AI. Inside that, we find machine learning, deep neural networks, and in the intersection of those sets, we have those large language models that today's talks are about. But if you use those, if you create AI applications and provide them as a service or sell them as a product, you have to be aware of some legal aspects of it. So don't forget to consult your lawyer. And in the AI realm of the law, the relations are inverse. So AI system is defined as a computer system that makes decisions and has autonomy, and it can have the potential to adapt to the problem. So AI is the innermost set, while in the scientific nomenclature it's outside, and they took care not to call it artificial intelligence, but an artificial intelligence system. So if you even encounter a legal definition, then keep that in mind that the two diagrams are inversed. So how do we define then ChatGPT or any other large language model in this chain? So in science and today's talk, AI will be the outermost set. Inside that we have machine learning, neural networks, and there are natural language processing tasks for which we can use large language models, among which we use today transformers, which is a generative AI model that we name ChatGPT, which is the most famous one. How was it created? So the speakers before me already told you that they were trained on an immense web corpus, including books, Wikipedia entries, Stack Overflow responses, and similar. So we can expect them to be good at typical tasks. These models do not exhibit logical reasoning, so we cannot expect that from these models. We can imitate that with the chain of thoughts reasoning structure, or we can instruct those models to follow steps that we are formulating for them. And in this way, we can solve them tasks which usually require logical reasoning, planning, or things like that. And prompt engineering is the science of formulating the task for the generative AI in natural language. So no programming skills are required for that. But at the end, we will see that programming is still important. There are some tips for formulating those requests. The instructions shall be clear, specific, and describe all important aspects. And we can also use examples. As the speakers before me told you, that these large language models can take roles. For example, we can instruct them to explain as an expert speaking to a 6-year-old, or we can ask them to be sarcastic or use familiar expressions, then they will be good at that task as well. And then if we use those systems, we have to be very concise about that, that AI is only a tool. It's not a co-author in the sense in the legal sense, as written down in the EU's AI Act, and also many journal author manuals. And these models may be wrong, biased, or stereotypic. We will see some examples for that. And one more thing to keep in mind is that technology is developing rapidly. So whatever I tell you today may be invalid or outdated tomorrow. Then when can we use such a system? So it won't solve all our problems, but it can be useful. And I brought you a flowchart, which was also presented to me, so I'm not the author of it, but the conclusions are really important. So if I use a large language model or a generative AI, does it matter that the output is true? So if it's not important that the output generated by the model is true, then it's safe to use ChatGPT or large language model. Can you provide me some examples for that scenario? And I don't care about the truth value of the output of the model.
What to cook for dinner?
Sorry?
What to cook for dinner?
What to cook for dinner? Okay.
No.
So maybe you will cook dinosaur for today's dinner. Okay. Yes.
But if you have for example, a children's tale, for example.
Children's tale. Okay. So in creative tasks, when you want to write a poem or generate a picture showing something, or even invite new recipes for dinner, then it's not really important to be true. If we require truth value, then by using these tools, we have all the responsibilities. So we have to ask ourselves whether we have the expertise to verify whether the output of the model is true. If we are not experts, then we won't publish papers in other domains than our own research, because it's not safe. I cannot be able to verify, truthfully say that the output of the model should be true. So stick to my domain and expertise. And if that's true, then the next question is whether I or you are able and willing to take full responsibility, legal, moral, and so on, for these inaccuracies in the output of the model. If so, then you can use those models. So that's one big takeaway message for today, that for every application, it's recommended to go through this flowchart, and you can validate those. You can go through those steps in your field of domain, so you don't have to verify each output one by one of these models, but you can decide whether you are willing to take responsibility just by judging the output of the model. If it seems reasonable, if the code written by the model seems okay, then maybe it's worth taking responsibility for it. It's up to you to judge based on those criteria. Today, we will use ChatGPT as a large language model, which is available at those two URLs. And make sure to type those URLs precisely, because there are many clones of the model which may ask you to pay in addition, or may trick you in other ways. So for the original ChatGPT, if you have registered and want to keep some privacy, then I recommend that you go to settings, data controls, and there is an option to improve the model for everyone. If it's switched on, then all your input prompts and the responses and your reactions will be used for training next generations of those models. But for privacy, you should keep it off. And also, if it's switched off, I only believe that they won't use those data if I'm allowed to go into their data centers and verify each line of their code. So if you deal with sensitive data, please don't upload it to them. Okay, so after those preliminaries, we can start asking requests to those models. How do we do that? So previous talk mentioned that by formulating a prompt, we have some tricks and tips to get more accurate responses. Some of those are on this slide, that you can use priming or personality for giving a personality of the model. So write a code as an expert or do a translation as an expert. It may provide you better results. Then you have to formulate the task. For example, a simple programming task is to create a double linked list. You can add decorators or mode of presentation, how we want to obtain the results. For example, insert comments for each line of code, or whether you want to have an object-oriented solution, or you want to have functional programming, or such decorators exist. When providing a prompt, you can save time, because these models are generally instructed to tolerate the typographic errors and to be helpful and polite. So if you ask the model to please write me a code in Python, then it will respond in a similar manner that, yes, sir, here is the code I have written for you given this task. Now, if you just tell in plain language, write the code for that, then here is the code. It's shorter, you saved some time. Okay. Another thing to consider is that the models were trained on data. So if there was more data, then the performance will be better. So using English language for the prompts and writing code in Python will perform better than using Hungarian and asking for a Fortran code. But models are evolving, so those differences are diminishing by the time.
Fortran, sweet and Hungarian.
Yeah. Yes. So even Fortran, Algol, or Lisp, or any of those archaic languages can be a challenge for the model, but there is plenty of Python code and C code on the net, so we expect it to perform better. Yes. When we provide, yes.
Can one, for example, ask to translate from one, let's say, from Python to Fortran or backwards?
Of course, and those models perform quite well. on those tasks. Yes. Okay, so you can provide context for the model. As we have heard, that when generating the response, the models use some noise, some probabilistic output is presented to the user. And by providing context and specific instructions, we reduce the creativity of the models and channel all those creativity into a successful solution of our problem. So it's usually beneficial to give context and in such a way increase the probability of success. Yes, we can also guide the model with example solutions for the cases that we want to solve or we want to avoid. For example, I can provide the model with some date format, so you know that calendar date is written in many different ways, and I can provide it with examples how to treat each of them and convert them to a standardized format. The same for street addresses. And in some cases, we can provide examples to be avoided. That's called negative prompting. So sometimes it's easier to define what you do not want to have in the output. For example, if you don't want to include any personal information, or you don't want to the response to be too long, or things like that. Yes. Usually it is a good idea to break the tasks down into small steps, but commercial models often use this chain of thought principle to break the task down for themselves. And note that even providing the same prompt or input and reducing the temperature, you may get slightly different outputs or responses. Some typical errors that these large language models commit are misunderstanding the instructions. One of my favorite examples was presented by Miklós Sebök and Rebecca Kish. They wanted to analyze the performance of the Los Angeles Lakers matches, and they asked the model to create a data set for all the matches between 2023 and 24. They provided the number of matches and required the points scored and whether the match was win or lost. And ChatGPT understood that okay, I will create a data set for you, write the code. And the code generated sensible random numbers. So they were integer in the range of the points scored in a basketball match, but they were just random. So that's when ChatGPT went wrong with taking the prompt literally. So we have to refine the prompt, download the data set or upload the data manually, and then do the statistics even without programming knowledge on this data set. Yes, sometimes these models are focus too much attention on the context or on the previous discussion and get trapped into an idea and keep repeating the same answer, and we can't move them out, even if telling them that that's something wrong, do it differently. It just keeps repeating, then please start a new conversation, because usually those models don't transfer knowledge from one conversation to the other one, except when you explicitly ask for that. So there are some magical words that please remember that for me, or something like that. And the model knows that it has to save it for an external memory, which is assigned to your account. Those models often exhibit hallucination when they invent things which are not present. So people ask ChatGPT for journal references, for articles, and often the return responses were papers never written, but they seem to be just the solution for your problem, or citing a law which did not exist but applied perfectly to the case the lawyer was working on. So in these cases, it's a good idea to confront the model, and it may correct it. So when programming an embedded ESP32 device, I encountered that case that for the Bluetooth API, it invented an event that did not exist in the API. When I confronted the model, then it sincerely apologized for that. And after that, surprisingly, it could provide the correct answer. So it's a good idea to confront the model and preserve the context in those cases. So I have brought you some examples, first on the screen, and in the second part of the presentation, I will do the coding with you. So the first example will be a physics-motivated task. Many of you are familiar with the Ising model, where you can have upward and downward spins, which are small magnets, and the energy is defined by pair interactions between the neighbors. And the task is complemented with generating a graphical user interface, which people usually doing research hate to do because it's tedious. You have to remember a lot of APIs, and it just doesn't work. So you can ask ChatGPT to write an API for you. Previously, I have in these talks, I have presented an example where we have worked step by step on a different task, but since the models evolved so much that we can give the whole task as a single prompt, still broken down to step-by-step instructions. So here I asked the model to write a Python code for simulating the Ising model. I give the lattice size, so it hints the model to have a named variable which represents the size of the lattice. And I provide the update rule only by name, and then I describe the layout of the graphical user interface. So the lattice shall be on the top. Below that, I want to see the magnetization, and I want to have a slider on which I can set the temperature for the model. And the model generates me a Python code. And after that, it explains how to use that Python code. I hope that I can show you how that model runs actually. So I think that we can be satisfied with the result. Let's hope it will work. You have the code among the examples and inputs I have provided you. Okay, it's starting. I hope so. And here is the Ising model, and on the fly, I can change the temperature. So if I decrease the temperature, the model freezes. If I increase the temperature, it introduces noise, and it works on the fly. I can trap the model both in the blue and in the red domain. So I think that we can be satisfied with those results, but we can go further if we want to refine our program, and we can ask ChatGPT to modify the code and continue the conversation. So I can ask to use the model with open boundary conditions. That was something I have not specified. So how the spins on the border of my lattice interact with the others, that was not in my request. So the ChatGPT made an ad hoc choice to have periodic boundary conditions. I can ask to correct that. I can ask to change the color of the plot. One big disadvantage of this is that the free version of ChatGPT follows this conversational structure. So if I ask to modify the code, it will output the whole code again. I have to copy that and paste that, and it's difficult to track the changes, even though the model gives me some summary of how the code was updated. It's up to me to manually update and track the changes. What can we do about that? If you pay for ChatGPT, it has a canvas function, canvas like the piece of drapery a painter is drawing. In that mode, you can ask to work on specific parts of the output code or the specific part of the output document. So for a grant application, I can ask to include more details in the preliminaries, or be a bit more formal at the end of the document and transform only a piece of the code. Yes. Then if we have written our code with ChatGPT, we can ask the same tool to analyze and debug the code. So ask whether ChatGPT finds any mistakes in the code. And yes, it's really handy. It can tell us the limitations of the code it has written. So it will go into the energy calculation, into the initialization, the reproducibility of the results. So if you want to use a fixed seed, then it was not in the code. It finds poorly documented parts of the code. And also it gives some suggestions to improve the GUI and graphical user interface and the visualization. So I recommend that during this session or after that, you can try out those prompts, and ChatGPT will write you a code that is slightly different than mine, but hopefully that will work the same way. I brought you another example for analyzing code, which is a bit easier to follow. In this specific example, I have written a function that converts hexadecimal digits into their numeric value, and analyzing this code, the validation and the analysis of the code is quite good. So it tells me how the conversion logic works, analyzing the different branches. Then it points out the issues of the code, that this function does not include any input validation. So if I provide characters outside of this set, it won't work. And after that, even without asking, it suggests modification of the code, how to improve my code. So it's very automated, and I can spare time just by feeding the code into ChatGPT without telling anything. It will do something with the code. Earlier models did not do that, but now these models are fine-tuned to infer the context or possible questions and answer those. So I think that's about working with ChatGPT, and I will move to the next example. It's still a screenshot for working with ChatGPT Canvas, where you can have a right part of the document or the end product, and on the left you can give instructions or highlight some lines and work on those. So my next example will focus on what we can do when we deal with sensitive data, where I can't outsource it to third parties like ChatGPT for analysis, and a bit this shows how you can use retrieval augmented generation as well. Not specifically this example, because it's only a border case of that, but we will see the details. First of all, we have to know which systems are available to us. There is an implementation of free language models at the Science Cloud, so the cloud operated by the Hungarian research networks at Wigner and at Staki, where you have access, or you will have access to different large language models which are free. Free, it means in this case that you can download the model, understand its structure, know all of its weights, but still you won't be able to know on which data they were trained. So one of them is the Llama model, which is the model provided by Facebook. It's open in the sense that you can download it, run it on your machine, but you cannot know exactly for sure on which data it was trained. There are a lot of those models, and now there are bigger ones. So instead of this 8B, which means 8 billion parameters, so 8 times 10 to the power 9, there are models with 30 billion parameters or more, and also models specialized in coding or in natural language processing. So you can choose among them and even compare their performance. In this version, you can also set some of the parameters of those modules. For reproducibility, you can fix the seed and decrease the temperature, or you can fine-tune the creativity of the model. So those two parameters were covered in the last talk. Top K means that then when choosing the next token, we choose among the top K most probable next tokens to complete the sentence. And top P means that include tokens up to obtaining the cumulative probability P. So consider as many tokens that cover 90% of the possible continuations of the sentence in this example. So when we have this tool at Stucky, we can attack our problem of analyzing sensitive data. This won't be the case of sensitive data because I naturally can't share with you the sensitive data now, but I will demonstrate the features. I have downloaded two data files from a web page which deals with causality, so telling apart cause and effect, which is related to my current research topic. And in this data file, we have the sun irradiation and the temperature as a time series. So as a function of time, they recorded those values. It's included in the first txt file, and the second file has a description of the data. And then I can ask the model that to understand the data structure based on the attachments and write a Python code that analyzes the data and look for the periodicity of those signals, and to use the corresponding units on both charts, and also find the most probable period times. If I tell you that the first file only contains data and the second one is the description of the data, then what do you think which file the model will look into? And probably into the second one, because the first one does not even contain headers. So that's a pity. The model cannot do anything with that. But if you provide them with PDFs of research articles, you can ask the model to write a summary about those papers, given some specific key features or points, or look for ideas for further research. So it can process files quite at speed and generate some kind of response. The interesting thing is that when it tries to load the data, it links to the description of the data. So it's actually the metadata that it tries to load. It's a pitfall. We will have to fix it manually, and the environment has a nice run button there, but I wasn't able to use that button in this case because either it could not load, so it could not load either the uploaded file, so the Python interpreter was run in a different context, nor was it able to download data from the web, but it was able, for example, to generate an easing simulation snapshot, run that and return directly the image snapshot. So what are the advantages? That our data does not leave the research network. We can compare the performance of multiple language models and control also the large language model parameters. We had to fix an issue in the code, so change the file name, but after that the analysis was working well and provided me the plots without any coding knowledge. And it used the correct SciPy libraries. I won't show you the code, it's included in the repository. It's the raw data, it was plotting it correctly in the same window. Then it was showing in two separate windows the periodogram of the data. And if we look on the horizontal axis, it's correctly in cycles per day, and the yearly cycle has a high peak, so the temperature has a yearly cycle. The other data set was shown in a different window, and I have to draw your attention to the fact that these models can fail. So I was cheating a bit because this was a correct output, but sometimes it was trying to give the frequency in cycles per year, but the conversion of days to year was mistaken, because instead of dividing by 365, it was multiplying by it, or doing things like that. So you have always the responsibility to validate the output. For this research question, the output seems reasonable if we got a yearly cycle, so we will accept this output, but if we get another one, we have to check for that as well. The third part of the examples will be the practical session, where we do some everyday code development. But first, I will tell you some of the theoretical aspects of it. So, what is Copilot? Copilot that we are going to use for this task is a brand name of Microsoft, no advertisement intended. We will talk about GitHub Copilot in this session, and it's a tool designed to write programs. So while ChatGPT is a general purpose tool that can be used for many tasks, Copilot is restricted to programming, and we expect from that restriction a better performance on programming tasks. So if you ask about political questions, GitHub Copilot will answer that it's out of its domain of expertise and use another tool. But if you ask, for example, about the coding paradigm, it will happily explain it in natural language as well. Yes, while ChatGPT, as we have seen, was producing the input sequentially and engaging in a conversation, Copilot has all the repository you are working in as a context, so it can look forward and backward in code and do the completion or suggestions based on the code already written. There is a important pitfall here as well, that it can this way replicate the errors that are already in the repository or you have already made. So sometimes you have to ask analytic questions that whether it's a good way of solving the problem, whether it has some suggestions to improve on that. And one big advantage is that you don't have to engage into a conversation, but as you are typing, it can provide you with code completions, which can be extremely fast, and it can boost your performance, and it can be used in almost all major integrated development environments. What is behind the front end, what is under the hood? Now, for me, it was 3 models available with the license. One of them was GPT-4o, and I could use O1 Preview or O1 Mini in a preview mode. So those are models being introduced to GitHub Copilot. And there was an announcement that another large language model will be available, like Claude Sonnet, which is set to be proficient with complex coding tasks and multi-step problem solving, or Gemini, which is famous for its really large context window. So it can deal with really large code bases and provide solutions based on that. Why do we use Copilot, and how shall we look at that tool? For that, I would suggest an analogy that you can debate. That first, early computers used machine code, which was really a pain to write code for them. You had to use this punch card with holes in it, and it was slow. Then assembly languages came, and then they evolved to high-level programming languages. integrated development environment appeared, programmers invented new paradigms to ease the task of coding and remove part of the mental burden to predefined boxes that you can use for programming. And these transformers or large language models are similar to those. It's a tool which won't replace you, or at least today it is not replacing you as a programmer, but it can provide a new level of automation, abstraction, and can help the programmer. And their proper use comes from this observation and from this paradigm. This existed previously as well. It was called practice of pair programming, when two coders work together. Usually, they have different roles in pair programming. One of them is the driver, who actually is in front of the keyboard and writes the code. And the other, the more experienced one, is the navigator, who thinks in high-level concepts and instructs the other one to write the code, and also checks the validity of that code. And surprisingly, it isn't twice as slow as coding alone would be, but actually it seemed to add only 50% of time in development, according to some surveys, but it also resulted less bugs in the code. So which role can the generative AI take in this scenario? We have talked about that it's only a text prediction tool, so it is with an analogy like a newly hired mediocre junior programmer who has read a lot of documentation, taken every boot camp, and checked out every answer on Stack Overflow. So it has vast knowledge, but it lacks the high-level overview. So it's you that has to take the role of navigator and provide the knowledge. You should do the planning, the design, and let AI do the job it's good at, writing at incredible speeds. Yeah. So
sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Go on.
Have you heard of anyone trying pair programming with people in academia?
In academia, no, not really. And I have heard about some studies, so not even real pair programming, but some studies of matching competencies of programmers to boost their output. So it was like those people who are a bit extroverts, whether they perform that matched with people of the similar group, or with those who are a bit introverts and like to focus and never talking to others. So it provided interesting conclusions. You can find such studies in sociology. Yes.
The question was whether people in academia do pair programming. And you, with Attila, did the following project in pair programming, didn't you?
Yes, for one session.
Out of curiosity. That was 3 years, wasn't it? No? Okay.
That was pair programming session.
Okay, so in the audience, we have at least one person who has done pair programming. For me, it's already a difficulty to find a collaborator who wants to discuss the API of the code that I want to write, because it's not a waste of time, but they often find their excuses of not being so experienced or not knowing the problem that well. So usually it's good to have someone who can monitor or discuss the code you are writing. Yes, and as with ChatGPT, these models are developing rapidly, so you have to try out different tools and compare them for your experience. Okay, for GitHub, you will have this slide where how you can obtain an educational license. It takes some time, so who doesn't have one now either has the option to start the one for a lifetime free trial for the coding, or wait how it works out. I will show all of the examples on my laptop. So it's not expected for you to follow in real time. But if you try to do so, then you are allowed to ask questions why you get the specific result, and whether it's good or how to fix it. So now I'm going to sit in front of my keyboard and start a prepared notebook. If you want to engage with GitHub Copilot, then here as well, I recommend to check the settings on the web page of Copilot. You can click on your avatar and go to your Copilot, and you have an option of allow GitHub to use my code snippets. If it's unticked, then they make a promise not to use your code in improving their model. We will see how good they are to keep that promise.
Just sorry, can I have a question?
Of course.
You said that we should use Visual Studio, but at the institute, for example, lots of us are using Jupyter notebooks and Jupyter Labs.
It's a different thing. So it's an interesting branding technique of Microsoft again, that they have an editor called Visual Studio Code, which has nothing to do with the famous and well-known Visual Studio, which has been with us since 2 decades or so. Visual Studio Code is just an editor which can have modules, extensions, preparing it for use with different languages, Python, C, Bash, or whatever you wish. So it's just an editor. It works both on Linux, Windows, and Mac. So that's why I am suggesting to use that one, but it's up to you. GitHub Copilot is available in all of these development environments that I'm listing here, and maybe more, but these are the officially supported ones. Okay, so let's switch to GitHub Copilot demo. In the downloaded data, we have this folder of using with an integrated development environment. And I have a README file in here, which describes the steps I'm going to perform. Why is it important to present it like that? So if I would have the solution already of my task in the repo, then it would be cheating and looking up the answers there. So it's a file where the code is not complete, so we can see how Copilot is completing it. So I will create, okay, maybe some explanation. So Visual Studio Code is here, this editor. We can have this button with called extensions, and look at the installed extensions. I have those for C. Probably you will need Python as well. And you can look here that I have installed Jupyter extension. So this development environment can support Jupyter notebooks as well, freely. So that's not true for PyCharm, for example, where you have to have a license to work with notebooks. And it's also good at remote execution of code, so you can work through tunnels. You have this small button in the bottom left corner, then you can open a remote window with a shell and tunnel your data through that to a remote Python kernel or to a remote session. Yes, and there is one more thing on this wheel here, that I want to choose the Python profile for me, so that the commands common for Python should be default and not those that work with other languages. Yes, so create a new file. Let's call it demo.py. I will save that file there and split the screen to have this README on the right, to be able to copy and paste code snippets. So And
Excuse me, sorry,
yes.
is it possible to change from dark mode to normal mode because it's on the projector, for example, in red or green text is white?
Okay, that's a good point. So
You can ask Copilot and it will change it for you.
let's try it. Change VS Code to bright mode. And probably, yes, so it tells me how to do it. It may have a VS Code extension. So maybe if I use this at symbol and change to bright mode, then maybe it will just do it. VS Code. Let's see whether it can interact with my integrated development environment. We are a bit closer to it. Show it in the command palette. So yes, color theme. I can go to the color theme and change to light mode. So you have the help, and you don't have to go all through the menus for that. And also I will increase a bit the font size as well. I think it should work with scrolling, but Control and plus will do the trick. So what do we do at the start of the one-day project? So when we don't want to create complex libraries, just work on some data discovery. We want to include import numeric libraries, and when Copilot is active, then if I write a comment that what I do in the following, it starts to complete that code. So it suggests me to include NumPy. Then if I hit tab, it I will go for the interpreter. I will get a suggestion. Yes. Now it seems okay. But it's a bit slower than expected. Usually it spits out those suggestions faster. If I hit tab, then I accept the suggestion, and with enter, I move to the next line.
So can it see your GitHub repo and knows that you deal with numerical stuff?
Yes, probably it can see some of my repos, but it has already suggested me some import I was not using in those repos, or at least not the ones I have written.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I use by
Yes.
small.
Yeah. I would go with more such recommendation, but yesterday it suggested more of that, but now I don't see it doing that. You can try that in your mother language or natural tongue as well. Yeah. Why? Okay. So if I write import, then it will complete it with further imports as well. Somewhere it was not continuing. Last time I checked it, gave me a much longer list. Okay, so I have some numeric libraries. Previously, it was a list like that. Okay, how are they ordered? Maybe it seems reasonable to import NumPy first. It is a dependency of the other libraries. Maybe it's just the most probable import one would do with numeric stuff at the beginning. Yeah. Okay. So I will work on a small module which is doing some statistics, but don't tell it to Copilot. So I copy the code for that into the window, and I can ask Copilot to explain what this code does. I hit Control-I, and I can ask Copilot, what does this code do? And it will break down the code. it will tell me what so far it knows about the code. It recites basically the instructions because I have not carefully paid attention not to use any meaningful names and not to reveal much details about my project, but it has sometimes it uses some interesting expressions. Yes. It says, yes, it pointed out that if I run this code, I will get an attribute error at this point. Yeah, that's because I have still to complete that part of the code because those attributes were not created on the class. And I'm looking for an explanation which tells me it's not in today's output, but previously told me that it's a skeleton of a class. So it was quite clever in discovering that it's not complete. Okay. Sorry with that. I will have to put my on silent mode. Okay. So if I just try to complete the code, I go to the line, it suggests to complete the code with zeros. And if I go to a line which starts with def, it starts to suggest function names, but okay, it was just cheating. It repeated its previous suggestion. So let's give it a hint. So I want to work on the class, and from the small token that Sn may be a sum of numbers, it inferred that I want to add the new value to it. And after that, it is flying because it suggests that S squared is the sum of squares, N is the number of elements I have added to the statistics. If I try with remove, then what do I get? Yeah, I get a 3-line completion, so I can accept that. And it works nicely. As expected, it is doing the trick. Now, if I ask Copilot what this class does, it will give me a better detailed explanation. Control I for asking it. Sorry for that. And enter there. Now it will have some more context and it will explain what this class does. It explains the two methods. And it inferred that it's to keep track of some statistics related to the data it received. Quite good. Yeah, okay. I will bring your attention to one more thing that this chat window was in a floating mode previously, but I can move it to a sidebar, and it had some features over there. We can ask Copilot a few things, and it's Copilot chat, open chatting editor, open a new window. But, we can have Copilot edit as well. I hope it was not just yesterday's feature, because now I don't see this button there. There was another button in the top row that instead of chat I had Copilot edit.
Control Shift I.
Control Shift I. Let's try that. Control Shift I. It's in the top, but it's not. It's not showing. Okay, we will see that. So it sometimes does some updates, and some features are in preview mode that maybe are served based on availability. Okay, we will continue to work with the code. So now to statistics, I want to calculate the, for example, the mean of the data I have entered. It's reasonable to calculate the standard deviation as well. It has the usual terms and sometimes with the empirical correction for the standard deviation as well. And now we can start working on that code. We can ask Copilot to different instructions to improve the code. For example, I can ask Copilot to do its best to annotate input and output types of my code. And look there, it says that the input should be probably floating point numbers and the output is such as well. And there should be a button for applying this modification in the editor, or with the edit function, there was a comparison of diff showing me how the lines changed. Yes, maybe you have seen that it was throwing me an error that it cannot apply because I was on the right-hand side in the notes, and I want to apply it into the code. So I have to move to the code window, and applying the code there will do some work. And now I have a bit better documented code. We can do the same thing with adding doc strings and so on. How much time do I have left? Half an hour.
Half an hour, yeah.
Okay, so if we have half an hour, then we can go through full the script, so we can add doc strings. It will do so happily. We can apply that as well. Again, I'm not in the correct window. By that button, I can apply the code. And in the meantime, I will try to find whether there is a Copilot edit function there. Here I can change among some language models. It suggests some questions. What else do I have open? Chat editor, open a new window. I don't think it will help. No, not a new window. Okay. I can ask Copilot to use more meaningful names for my code as well. And it does its job just as expected. Okay, so we can create documentation for yes, it asks me to select the code I want to edit, or at least move there. Let's go there. Maybe it has lost somehow the context. Yeah, with the new preview, I can tell you that there was another switch here which showed on which part of the code or on which file it was working. Now it seems to be missing, but in a few days it will. I think it will come back. Okay. I can apply those meaningful names. Oh, it did not find the code because I have accidentally closed the demo file. Okay, so let's close those and again open Copilot. So, sorry for that. It's a bit of splits my attention between you and the coding, and one does not make as many mistakes when being just in front of its computer. Okay, so it can suggest more meaningful names, apply those in the code. Okay, move that into the sidebar, the chat window. Okay. So now we have a class for doing some statistics, and it's time to start using that class. We may want to analyze some kind of data. For example, I can write a function that analyzes data, and it gives me immediately a huge number of suggestions which include previous style, so which reflects the previous style. So it contains docstring annotations, type annotations, and it will analyze the data set. Okay, as a context, I can try to attach a file. For example, from this directory, I have prepared the same temperature and solar irradiation file with a header here to be attached. And if I ask Copilot, then I will be able to choose among the recently opened files or select a file from the tree. And providing that as context, then I can ask Copilot to do statistics of the data file, and hopefully it will infer which are how to load that data file and which are the columns of the file. Now it suggests me, no, not there. So let's discard that and try it again, because the scope is important. So maybe I was inside another function. Making mistakes is very instructive to the audience, because it reveals the experiences I have gathered already with that tool. So let's try it here outside of the functions to ask Copilot to analyze this file. Okay, so do statistics on all columns of the given data file. And if I ask it nicely, I hope that it will produce some code. Yes, it has inferred that this data file has white spaces as separator between the columns. It loads the data with pandas, and it has already looked up the header from the file. And yes, it uses pandas to describe the statistics of that file and print that. Yeah, we can apply this and see what we get when we run this. And at home or at your own computer, you can ask in a comment to do the similar statistics using our class of statistics we have written previously in our code. Okay, did it arrive to my main window or not? I hit apply, but I don't see whether it was applied. No, it did not arrive here. Inserted cursor, that should do the work then. So it was not related to existing code, but it was done here. Okay, so if I run this code, it will hopefully correctly load the data file and output some statistics. Oh no, there is an error. It's a file not found error. What can cause this? Of course, I know the reason, that we have opened the folder which contains the 3 subfolders, but when loading the file, it did not include the path. Oh, we shall give some power to my machine. Okay. So what do we do in that case when we encounter an error? As I have told you, these models were trained to be helpful. So without any politeness, I just tell it that there was an error, file not found error. No such file or directory. Okay, it solved the issue, checks whether the file is there. Okay, that's one kind of a solution. Use, I can continue the conversation, rather use the correct path for the file. Can you? And okay. Yeah, it worked. It used an absolute file reference. It will do the. Okay, let's hit accept and try to run the code again. And what did go wrong? Because now the file name was, yeah, it preserved the previous command. That did not overwrite, but it did preserve. So the source of the error was still there, in spite of the newly written code. File not found.
Do the capital letters.
Yeah, the capital letters will be a problem. I will just fix it for you. That's strange because no one ever has written a capital that in capital letters. File not found. Okay. Let's try to fix that path. Okay, maybe on Windows you don't have to start with slash. So it seems that there were some developers there over there developing this tool. Okay, that's nice. I can ask here to, yeah, you can do that as well. So write a comment here that do the statistics using our class, and in that case, not like that, not like analyze it our class. We need to do a for loop. It is now it is not in the good mood for that. Analyze data. Oh, but still, okay, it worked. It was just that it skipped my attention that it has written a function, analyze data, as a complementary to our object. That's also something I would like to remember, that sometimes it just suggests auto-completion. I have experienced it many times in a Jupyter notebook, that it suggests the correct word in the cell. I hit tab to accept that word, and it turns out that it was not the variable name I wanted to use, but it thought of a library import of the same name. And it inserted, yes, the expression at the cursor I was dealing with, but also an include or an import at the top of the cell, and it can be really annoying. Okay. So I think that it should do the trick and analyze our code as well. Yes, we get a type error. We can try the usual approach of pointing out the type error. Yes, it suggests to convert to numeric values. We can say that I think that why does it do that? Because we have done it with pandas. maybe it maybe it has read the header. I think it is in the header in the file that is not numeric, and it will give me some solution. Now that's not the best example because you see that I'm typing a lot. But there is this mic icon here. I won't try and voice chat now, but you can talk to your repository and your development environment as well. Now my voice is not perfect, so I won't risk doing that. Okay, let's accept the modification and move a bit further. Move a bit further in our examples. Oh, what's happening? It's rewriting the whole code or something like that. Okay, let's close that. What else do I suggest here? We can do some drawing as well. I think that you can follow these instructions at home as well. And I will rather show you some fun stuff to do. Because we have already had an example where it used a graphical user interface, where ChatGPT created a graphical user interface. To repeat that with Copilot is not that interesting, but still you can ask Copilot to fix some issues. And when you are not satisfied with the plot output, you can try to attach a screenshot of the plot and explain what to change in the code. Do that. If it's in the mood, it will do that. But here I think that in the remaining time I will show you some more generalizations it is capable of, and also leave some time for questions. So if you are developing a web application, maybe you rely on databases of how to translate your website. If I created a dictionary here where I have English words for a form, and if I move here, from its general knowledge, Copilot can complete the Hungarian version, or if you don't know like Spanish, then you can write some Spanish code as well, or of course you can try some more exotic ones like Japanese or Chinese. If someone can confirm whether that's correct, then it would be nice. Yes. Also, it has a vast knowledge about code that appears. Which one is correct?
The Japanese.
The Japanese. Okay, thank you. Okay.
And Hungarian as well.
So both the Japanese and the Hungarian translations are correct. So I can have a list of countries, but not this way. I want to do rather like HU Hungary, but then England, Spanish, Japanese, and can I continue that? Yes, I can infer language codes just by accepting previous. Yeah.
The only problem is that
Sorry?
the United Kingdom is the country.
Okay, United Kingdom is okay. It's United States. Yes, and it has written England, right? As well, if you want to validate a phone number or some typical task, then you can ask, okay, and it seems to prefer some United States numbers, but I can maybe somehow instruct it to do a more general pattern. If I write a command, any phone number from the world, then it should give some different result. Okay, decimals, right. It allows separators like white spaces and dashes, and I can ask that the country code should be in brackets, or I can do a similar thing to validate an email address and write some regex that tries to match email addresses. So it can recall such examples from its training. And also you can have different lists on the web that what are some nice features of Copilot. For example, it can write a pull request summary for your commit. So my code was in a repo, then I can ask Copilot, here with this @ symbol, maybe I can do a command for GitHub and try to write summary for commit of my code, and hopefully it won't give me a tutorial, but it will write a summary for the code I have just written. Okay, somehow I have to provide as context this file I have been working on, demo, and suggest commit message. And let's see whether it works. So you can do different tasks with Copilot. And here is something which, which more or less describes what we have in this code file. So it can automate tasks like that. And usually when working in large projects, it can be very beneficial to follow the guidelines of that project, and if it can look up previous commit messages in that repo, then it can replicate them, and I don't have to care about the details how to format a commit message. Yeah. What else? You can work in the terminal, talk to your repository, so ask how it would implement some specific functions, whether there is a better way to do that, review issues on in your repository, create documentation, write test cases. Yeah, that was one more nice thing that here I will try to ask that in live, that write test case for my object. And then it will test adding, removing numbers. Yes. For this small statistics class, and we can ask what are special cases to pay attention to. I think of calculating like the mean when there is no data in our class should result in a division by 0 error. Yeah, and it writes special test cases for that as well, with some further motivation or pushing of the tool. It wrote the test case for 0 division that is expected. Okay, that's expected behavior, but I would rather avoid it and get some more meaningful message that that is empty. I cannot calculate statistics, but it can automate test case writing. It will ask what file it shall save the test case, how to run it. If you do it for the first time because it can use unit test and PyTest as well. Yes, we have seen that it can assist non-native English speakers, so you can ask questions in your native language, help testing your code, writing regular expressions. Also, you can automate sending tweets or asking how to exit the Vim editor, which can be really annoying for the first-time users. Yes, so I think that's about it. We have some time for questions while you are reading the conclusion.
Okay, thank you very much, Marcell. We have about 5 minutes for questions and of course a coffee break.
I think it's a naive question, but can you use this with, for example, the Wigner GitLab?
With the Wigner GitLab, so my repository was in the Wigner GitLab, so GitHub Copilot is a service provided by some Microsoft branding and the GitHub code base as a training set. So yes, yes and no. So it wrote me a commit message. I can use that message for GitLab as well. I think it sees no difference.
So it's not necessary to be on the GitHub itself.
Not necessary to post your code on the GitHub itself. From the software point of view, I think both of them use standard Git protocol. Maybe GitHub has some nice features that GitLab does not. But, most of them are shared, like continuous rolling out code developments and testing and all that exists in both flavors, but maybe a bit differently.
There's a question online.
Yes.
Online question.
Online question. Okay, let's try to.
Are we bidirectional? I thought we are just one direction.
Okay, now how do I want to exit that, but not the Zoom screen sharing. And let's move to Zoom.
To open the chat.
Okay.
No.
Why don't I see that?
I do not know.
It's just a raised hand.
Just a raise hand.
Peter, can you?
Okay, let's speak
okay,
up
just
and I will
increase
turn up the volume.
Okay, that's just a small technical question because you showed that you have this inline complexion. So it's, I mean, when you wrote the code, it already suggested something. I tried here and it doesn't do that. So maybe it is you have to pay for that feature to work, or because I just use this trial version, or I don't know, and I don't get that. But maybe I don't know what to do because it's
okay. So
can you repeat the question?
Yes, I repeat the question for the audience in places that Peter has tried the evaluation version and did not get inline code completion. I think it was automatic for me. So when installing the extension here, so first you have to sign up for GitHub Copilot on the web, then install the extensions here. Now I was working with Python, so I have installed the Python extension, and I have GitHub Copilot here and the GitHub Copilot chat as well. So GitHub Copilot is the extension that is doing the inline completion, I think, and GitHub Copilot chat is the floating window. So
okay, maybe I will only install one of them.
Okay. You should get them. First, it will ask you to use a browser to sign into your GitHub account to try the evaluation version.
Okay,
so to connect your session in the development environment with your GitHub account.
Okay, thank you.
So it will redirect to the browser. You have to do some security checks, and it will just be available.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions, either online or in the room? Yes, and the other thing that, okay, I got inline completions and I can use chat for writing code with requests told in human language. and I can guide the inline completion with comments that I write that the following line does that and that, and then the auto completion will try to match that phrase. Or even if I have a line of code, I can move above that line and use the hashtag to write a comment, and it will complete the comments as well. So it can write either code or documentation and comments.
Okay, so I think all of you are kind of exhausted, so I think it's time for coffee break, and then we can continue with about a second